Well, my, listeners, I hope you're ready for a good one. This is Donna Jean Kendrick with Widow, Wisdom, and Wealth. And today we're going to be interviewing Michael Flores. Now, he is pretty much a counselor, right? And he's helping parents and kids navigate everything from widowhood, co parenting, parenting with other family members, and divorce negotiations when it's court ordered. He's got a wealth of knowledge, but more than anything, he has a wealth of joy in his system and the way he wants to share his mission, and a little bit of his journey of how he got here. I hope you enjoy this one. It's a little bit over a half hour. If you have to drop off the kids or if you're commuting to work, I recommend you spend a little bit more time in the car, put it on pause, and finish it up tomorrow. The end of this podcast is my favorite. Thanks so much. Bye. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Widow, Wisdom, and Wealth. This is Donna Jean Kendrick, and I'm here today with Michael Flores. Let's tell you a little bit about Michael. So, Michael became a counselor because of an understanding that life has a finality. His early experiences shaped the idea that we should live our lives to the fullest capacity. Counseling is a way Michael assists others in achieving and creating the fullness in the life they desire. Life feels in alignment when you are where you are and where you want to be, and that they match. That's a mouthful, Michael. Michael believes that change occurs in therapy when narratives are explored that lead to solutions. Michael works with clients ages 10 and older. He's bilingual in both English and Spanish. And in 2013, Michael opened Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. For the last decade, they have built a team to serve the community's counseling needs, and their common goal at Brighter Possibilities is to achieve breakthroughs with clients, even when some clients may have lost hope. He has a license in professional counseling as a LPC. He is trained as a marriage and family therapist and was a past president of the Texas Association of Marriage and Family Counselors. He currently trains clinicians from many backgrounds on a variety of therapeutic topics. And I thought it was really important that we invited Michael today, one, to share his story, how he turned his own life experience into a mission, and what he does to really serve the families of listeners like you and me that tune into this podcast because we're trying to balance raising our careers, being a sole parent, maybe dating, maybe having a life of our own, as well as really trying to be the best parents while we're going through our own grief. I think the way he specializes will be intriguing for you all to listen and learn, and just his experience. So, Michael, thank you for being here.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right, I'm going to ask right out loud. Michael, Mickey, Mick, what do you want?
Oh, I've heard them all. Michael's good. Just don't call me Michelle. I've had that before too. So as long as it's Michael, I think we're in a good spot.
All right, I love it. I love it. So my husband always loves one like Aladdin or Aladdin. I'm like, I don't know, but I'm gonna mess it up in a sentence. I definitely am. So yeah,
Aladdin.
right? So many
Yep.
ways, and they're all beautiful, but I'll say the wrong one. But I'm gonna stick to Michael. Is that cool for you?
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you again for sharing your story with us, and for your mission. So, tell us a little bit about your background, for the listeners that might not be familiar with your story
Sure.
at all, and just how this story leads into helping those in widowhood parent better, help their kids. Floor is yours.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Well, I'm a product of many different dynamics as a child. I'm a mix culturally. So my father's Hispanic, my mother is Caucasian, and anyway, they met. I was born, and I think I was one of those like they knew what they were doing, but they weren't expecting to have a child. So I kind of was a semi surprise, I think, for them. But very excited. My parents were married for, I don't know, it wasn't too long. When I was about 4 years old, I was getting close to five. My mother committed suicide, and so my dad and we had to almost kind of go through grief together. My dad was trying to grieve his wife. I'm grieving my mother. We're trying to figure out how to do this together. He was trying to support me through that process. And in the meantime, throughout that, my dad had remarried a woman who was actually a very kind person, but she had a substance abuse issue. And so she had a son that was my age. So I became I had a stepbrother. And they ended up divorcing. And then my dad, some years went by, my dad remarried again. She had no children. And then my dad and I call her my mom, my stepmom now. Her name's Tracy, but her and my dad had kids together. So I have two brothers. So I have two half brothers in a sense. So I was a only child, a stepbrother, and a half brother. I've kind of experienced all these dynamics and transitions in family. And so as a kid, I really didn't know what I was going to get into. My dad was he is a private investigator. And so I was kind of inundated in the world of law, just growing up and seeing how my dad would help in the criminal side, or if there was a family law case or a civil case. I didn't know the difference at the time. And long story short, as I got into what I loved, I became super passionate about psychology. I took my first psychology class in college, and the I loved the information so much. It was the first time I'd ever like aced everything without studying. Like I had to study. I was the type of kid. I was not a phenomenal student. I had to put a lot of work in to learn and to really understand and grasp ideas. But for some reason, when I would go to my psychology class, I didn't have to study, and I would ace it, and I didn't know why. I was like, "This is the weirdest thing," right? So obviously, I knew I had the knack for it, and I loved it. I just didn't know how to use it. So I went up to my professor and said, "Hey, this stuff's all great and cool, and I love it. What do you do with it? How does this work in the world?" Oh, and her eyes lit up. She's like, "Michael, you can do so much with psychology." And she starts kind of going into things. And I'll never forget when she said, "You can help people." How? And she says, "Well, people will come to you and talk to you about their life and the things they want to change or be different, and you help guide them in ways with your questions and your approach so that they can better their lives." And I thought, wow, and they pay you for that? And she was like, yeah, you can actually, if you're really good, they can pay you pretty well. I mean, I was like, I found it, And so I never looked back since then. I was going to be an actor. I was going to go and be in the film, and I had a paid part once, and I threw all that out, and went straight into this world, and I haven't looked back since, and I loved every minute of it. And so, yeah, as I grew as a professional and as a student, I opened Brighter Possibilities, which was aimed at serving the community. I didn't have any special way to help them. I just wanted to help anyone that was hoping for help that I could serve. And we came across family law stuff. Go figure, right? So people of divorce have a lot of conflict, and relationships get broken, and co-parents have struggle working together. And all of a sudden, this guy, myself, shows up and says, "Hey, I think we can help." And next thing I know, I have attorneys that are referring to us and judges, and now we're all over the state of Texas. I've worked with people I mean, I'm in Fort Worth, but I've gone as far as Odessa, and testified in court there, which is if anyone knows Texas, Texas is huge. And but we've been everywhere, and I love it. And I haven't been in I won't say all parts of Texas, but we've I think we've been in, if I last counted, probably 12 counties. So it's been huge, been huge. So it's been good though, but it's been huge.
Yeah. No, and
So
thank you for
that's my
sharing that.
story.
Yeah, a little bit of the background of the story. And I always say, and I think other listeners have heard me say, you can have a job, you can have a career, and you can have a mission, right? So the job is like me making waffles on ice cream as a teenager on the boardwalk in New Jersey, right? A career is like what I had before my first husband passed, of like saying, okay, I really like this. I'm talented in it, but I feel the rewards by developing my team and by promotions and by income. But then you have a mission, which is, wow, I get to wake up and what I love to do, I get paid for.
Right.
And the people I serve and the change that I can make, that's a mission. I can hear
Yep.
that you're doing that in the state of Texas. And thank you. And I will tell you, we have a mandatory meeting every year in Texas. And last year, my second husband, Jim, went with us. And then he drove from Dallas area to Lubbock, Texas. And he was like, Donna, Texas is like the United States. It's just huge. Like you just keep going and going. And
Yeah.
there's cotton stuck to my
Yeah.
car. Like it was
That's
so
funny.
neat.
You drive one corner of Texas to the other corner, it can take you a whole day.
And he
I
said the
mean,
culture is completely different between this, like the ends of Texas, and they identify that way. So
they really
pretty
do.
neat.
I mean, if you're in Austin, you're getting a whole different vibe. If you're in San Antonio, you're getting a different vibe. If you're in Dallas, you're getting a different vibe. We call it across the river. So like Fort Worth and Dallas, we don't go to that side of the river. We do, but it's like the joke, right? Because Dallas is its own culture of people, and
Yep.
Fort Worth is its own culture of people. And so it's beautiful. There's a lot of filming. I don't know if people know this, but they're filming so much stuff out here in Fort Worth, like movies and things that people are finding on Netflix. And I didn't realize that people were doing that around here. They said that this is becoming like the second Hollywood.
I love that.
Um, oh, I mean, I do too, but the traffic's horrible. So,
Well, hey, if you
but
ever want to pivot from what you're doing now, you can go back to acting,
yeah,
and it's right there. The pool is there for you. So,
it's all
yeah.
here.
Traffic is a
Maybe
big
if I'm in
thing.
a movie as a therapist, maybe I can do that. Maybe if I'm in a movie that I
Think
can
you're
do
doing
that.
fine. So, so can you explain a little bit about like how do you work? Like, let's say it's a situation where if it's something that's either divorce or widower, and you have a parent who's struggling with their own emotions as well as watching their kids struggle, watching this transition. Do you have maybe an ideal client or an example that you could share with us about how you work to engage both sides?
Oh, that's a great question. So, how you're asking how I approach helping
Yeah.
families and engaging both sides of that coin. The first thing I've learned is that I've never had a set of parents that came in that didn't want what was best for their child. I've had people that are I won't call them selfish, but they kind of want things to be a certain way because they believe that's in the best, for their child, but that doesn't always mean that's what it is. And so I make this comment with parents. I say, when I as a therapist in helping you through things and I come across an impasse on what I'm having to give a therapeutic impression, I'm going to always lean on what your child needs, not what everybody wants. Is anyone opposed to that? And they're never opposed. Like they're yeah, yeah, do what my kid needs, like regardless if I want it or not. And really what that line does is it sets them up to realize like, hey, you may not hear what you want to hear as I'm working through this and based on what your kid needs, but I want you to know ultimately your child's going to need this from you. Make sense? And they have a right to disagree with me. Of course, they're the parents, they're the one raising the kids. But that buy-in is what I do up front. And parents, what I've learned is that you have co-parenting, right? There's this other thing we use called parental alignment. That is more powerful as a therapist, is to help parents realize they're actually agreeing on the same thing they want. They just have a different way of how they want to get there. Does it make sense? Their mode of transportation is different. So co-parenting is where you deal with the mode of transportation, but you have to make sure that they understand that they parentally align first. And so, in my opinion, is a good therapist helps create parental alignment first. Once you have that, the rest is just conversation.
Now, are
So,
you usually working with the parents and the child all at once or each
oh
individually
yeah.
and then bridge them together? How's the structure work? Because I know myself, I went after the loss of my husband, I went and I worked on my own. And then the kids
Mhm.
worked on their own. And then we came together as one. And then as years came back, sometimes they'd go back to a counselor on their own and they'd bring
Yep.
me back in when, the things that they understood at 8 felt very different at 12, right? And experiences.
100%.
So just for someone who, because I will say, for many of times in divorce situations, for the clients I work with, as well as with the widows and the widowers, they're in action, but taking the
Mhm.
time to do this part of the heavy lifting, which actually makes the rest of the heavy lifting a little easier. They don't believe it at the
Right.
time, is not what they'll slow down to do or where they want to spend their money at the time. So if we could just frame it so that they understand what are we walking into, how does it work? Not everyone will work this way, right? But what to expect. How about that?
It's so true. Yeah, all families. So a lot of people experience the same things, but they all kind of tackle them a little differently. And so you have to look at each family as its own system, right? And how the system functions. And I was trained as an LPC and as an LMFT. LMFT is licensed marriage and family therapist in our state, what we call it. So I got training in both. And so what I've learned is that the more that I've treated people as working in a compartment of a system. So the more I've worked with them, it's going, they're part of this huge system that's functioning, either working well or not working well. That to me has had more, I've had more progress and success treating it from that perspective. So the question going back to how do I serve them? Do I do them all together? It really depends on what's going on in the family at the time. A lot of times when we get court orders, we have reunification. So it specifies a certain parent with the child, right? So it's already kind of aligned for
It's a
me.
have to.
Correct. Like this is what we're court ordering to happen. And so that's really the line of work I'm doing. However, some judges have gotten real creative. And what they'll do is they'll say, I kind of want the emphasis here, but I want it to be family counseling. And so they're basically saying we don't want to leave out the non-reunifying parent.
Got
And
it.
so they're allowing us to really take on the whole thing. And so what I've learned, the best pattern is start with the parents, right? So I start with them first and go over, here's the expectations, here's what it looks like. What do you need me to know? A lot of them want to give me their history. So I let them have an independent session with me to do that, or they can email me the history if they think it's easier. So that way they don't have to spend money on a session. Then I meet the kid individually, separate from the parents, so they can kind of develop that rapport with me. And then I start the process of who's next, which is it dad and kid? Is it mom and kid? Is it mom, dad, and kid? Is it just kid? Again. And that's what I usually do because I'm centering around what does the kid need, right? And it's really amazing when I've done it that way. I've had much more success because before I was just kind of like, what do you guys think we should do? What would be the most helpful? And that's not uncommon for the way I'm trained. But when they're dealing with high conflict and they're going through a ton of their own issues in their family system, they don't always know how best to navigate it. So they're really kind of leaning into us, if that makes any sense. So it's more of a collaboration between us and them to help them achieve the goals that are set out and for the reason that they found us in the first place. So
And
that's a long-winded answer, but
no,
it really depends on what's going on in the
it was a
system.
good answer, a very good one. And we have a lot
Yeah,
of our clients, again, because we specialize a lot in widowhood, but we also have the divorce space. But what they realize is like, okay, you're learning to parent on your own. You had a partner before, but they're
yes.
gone. So you're learning to parent as sole parent. And many times we bring in that support system, a step parent or a grandparent that says, I'll come live with you during Monday through Friday so you can go to work. And they're
Wow.
rarely ever included in this counseling, the family
It's true.
counseling,
It's
but
true.
they are one of the main providers of care. And it can be very hard to have an adult parent living with you, helping you parent your kids, but that's their grandkids. So they're losing the part of being that grandparent that just spoils, right, and sends them home. They're now being
Yes, right.
caretakers.
They
And
sugar them up and send them home.
right?
Yeah,
And it's a
right,
lovely dynamic, and no one's mad, but sometimes you can go to counseling and get fine-tuned, right? And
right,
even to have like the parent or the step parent and the parent understand like we're on the same page. And you alluded to that in
right.
the beginning, but how are we going about it? And I love that you brought that up. Thank you.
Parental alignment. Yep, it's
Yeah.
always step one.
I think that's going to be in the title of this podcast, people. Just came here. Yeah.
Cool.
Question for you. Did your
Sure.
dad, because he said like, he got married and remarried, do you think he had
Yes.
the support he needed at the time? Because that's a hard one. I lost my husband to suicide, and I know how that felt as a parent as well
Mhm.
as a person. Who do you think
Right.
he leaned on?
I know who he leaned on. My grandparents, my grandma, my grandpa, his parents, who my grandmother doesn't speak English. Well, she does, but she chooses not to, if that makes any sense. And so growing up, I had to speak Spanish. And so that's where I learned it. I mean, I learned Spanish because my grandmother, even to this day, I mean, when we talk, we're talking in Spanish. My grandpa spoke perfect English and Spanish, and my dad spoke primarily English to me growing up. He was, born here. And so long story short, my grandparents are who he leaned on the most. And so there was that dynamic between when my dad wanted to parent me, but my grandparents didn't agree. And so it was almost like the co-parenting relationship was really between my dad and my grandparents, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So I remember one disagreement. I was a kid, and my dad said, he wanted me to do something, and I was kind of arguing as a kid back. My grandma slips into grandma role and kind of wants to defend me. So she starts going, "No, he doesn't need to do that." My dad's like, "Why are you correcting me in front of my son? Like you're taking away my parental power." And this is all in Spanish, right? And my grandma looks at my dad and she goes, "Well, who's your parent?" And my dad's just sitting there like, "I can't even win this battle with my mom."
Right.
you know. And I just remember sitting there as a kid going, "Oh, I created that probably a little bit." And I don't think I didn't play it. I knew what I was
Yeah.
doing. Yeah, I played it a little bit to my advantage.
I can see
I
little
will say
Michael
the one,
doing that. So
oh,
it's like,
I learned
wait,
about family systems when I was a kid. Come on now, I was living it. So, but I will say, my father did a phenomenal job parenting me, but I know that there was a parenting out of guilt. Parents who are single, they lose, their partner, whoever, they'll do this what we call guilty parenting, and it's because they feel bad that the kid doesn't have a nuclear home, right? And so they'll either overdo things, they'll either overspoil, or they'll say yes when they should have said no, because they're afraid that the kid's missing out on something. And what I tell parents is like, you still have to be the parent, and that guilty parenting is, it'll come back later as they grow up, and you'll struggle with them. You'll wonder, where did I go wrong? Because they either mistreat me, or they take advantage of me, or they, well, you buffered so much. You didn't give them permission to kind of learn it. So there's this, do you remember helicopter parenting?
oh yeah,
Okay. So someone came up with this term called lawnmower parenting. I'm not saying, I don't know if it's in a book or not, but someone told me this once and I thought it was interesting. Said lawnmower parenting is where you remove all the obstacles so that you give your kid kind of a clear path from A to Z. And so the kid never struggles through anything, so they don't really grow. They don't really mature well. And so then when things happen to them, they become victims. They're always victimized by everything, and they can't get through anything. Does that make sense?
oh it does.
So, so I thought it was an interesting point because I'm like, how many times have I sat in a session with a kid who's arguing how I don't have a voice and things are unfair. And I'm going, how did that happen? How did a kid get to a point of going, I'm a victim, right, of a situation versus this thing happened to me. I'm not the victim, but I had this really unfortunate circumstance. How do we get them from this to this? And so I see it all the time in therapy, a lot. But I think it's the parent who's doing guilty parenting. Makes sense?
It does.
And and I feel bad for them. Don't think that I don't notice it. And I don't know the parent has good intentions, but they don't realize the impact it has on their kid when they approach it from that perspective, if that makes any sense. They still
No,
have to be.
definitely. And I can honestly say, and I've lived it. Even when my first husband passed away, we lived abroad and my husband worked at the embassy in Rome. And so we would have to go to some very important dinners and our kids would be invited too. So you're sitting there next to the ambassador of the
Oh
UAE,
my
right? And
gosh.
everyone has to be polite, sit still, follow along. Right. And so my kids, like I can say I could give them a look across the day. They were little. Like we went there, my
Wow.
youngest was 2, right? My oldest was 6 when we got there, left at 12, 11, and 8. Like so this was their growing up area. I could just give them a look and they'd be like, shoot. Like they knew exactly what I meant. Or like that hand goes under the table onto your
Yeah.
knee. Like they
We
knew
need to
what
bring
that meant.
that back. We need to bring that back.
Right, fast forward, like, or yeah, to when we lost my husband, we're stateside. I will always say is I took my foot off the gas with parenting because I just felt so bad for them.
Yep.
And I wanted life to be so much easier because they had lost their dad and we moved them and they didn't have a friend base. I had a list of excuses. And I'll tell you that lasted about 2 years until your 12-year-old turns like 14, 15, and you're like, oh God, hell no. Right. And then I had to dig in again. And it was so hard to get my footing as that mom that could give a glare and they'd understand. Right. So hard to get that footing versus never have let it go. Like I felt like I was starting from scratch again. Two very independent people. But I definitely did it. And so
Yeah,
I like that you put a term to it
right.
because it's true. And I'm there, did it.
We call it in therapy the new normal. It's creating a new normal
Yep.
in your parenting and your relationships because we all have our chapter one. Makes sense. It's in usually chapter one ends with an event. Major event happens and we have to kind of rediscover ourselves. And I'll go ahead and just kind of throw this out there. I'll tell you something funny. I've been saying this more often recently, but I tell people if you ever want to stay out of counseling, I said there's two things you have to master. You always have to self-audit, which is being able to look at yourself and go, how can I be better? How can I do this better? Right? Looking at self first. And number two, quit avoiding the thing you know you need to do. So if you master those two things, you probably don't have to come into my office. And people just kind of look at me kind of funny. And I'm just, but really think about it. I mean, how often do I talk to people that have probably put something off for many, many years, and then it kind of hit the fan, and so now you're in front of me, right? Or you ended up in court, and the court says you need counseling, and so now you're in front of me, right? Because we've avoided this thing. And the other one is, everyone wants to when they're really struggling in therapy, everything's outside of them, right? This thing happened, and because of this occurrence, and like you said, I made my problem my mission. You said that earlier, and that's I think before we were recording, and you're right. That when someone asks me what got you in the field of counseling, I don't have a specific answer, but what I do know is I had a ton of life experiences that made me become extremely impressed with what this world was and how it helps people. And so I took more of the heroic stance. I didn't want people to go through burdens. I wanted to help them through burdens because I know what it's like to be burdened. Does it make sense?
It does. It does.
And so it's absolutely correct. And so now I can give that back to people as clear as day and say, hey, master these two things and you don't have to be here. But it doesn't mean you won't get stuck along the way or hit a roadblock or a speed bump when you're self-auditing or that thing you're still avoiding, right? But if you can master those and you don't avoid the thing and you constantly self-audit, you're probably not gonna not be on my couch very often. You won't have to pay for me, right? You can invest in something else.
No,
So
way to work yourself right out of getting clients. Well done. Good job, Michael.
I am the worst. I am not wanting retention, right? Like I want to help you and get you out.
It's the
If I wanted
truth.
retention in my business, I'm in the wrong business. This is not the business for that.
But I love it. It's almost like these are the two questions. Like when you have a quiet moment in the car, right? Like we even talked about, like, oh, the length of the podcast, because people are usually in the car trying to listen between picking kids up or going to work, right? But isn't that two questions to ask yourself in a quiet moment? Like,
100%.
right? I love it. All right, so we're gonna get a little geeky now into your world, right? Less of mine. Not really talking about much money and finances here, and I don't mind at all. I love this conversation. But
Okay.
you have something called the 4R exercise, as well as a type of, I guess, therapy or counseling called solution based. Is that it?
Yeah. So
Tell us a
solution
little bit
focused
about that.
therapy. Yeah. Solution focused therapy was a theoretical approach, and I would even go as far as to say it's not a theory anymore because there's so much data behind it. It was discovered as part of what they did in the Mental Research Institute in Palo Alto by two individuals, Insoo Kim Berg and Steve DeShazer. And so when I was in therapy in school, not in therapy myself, but when I was in school studying therapy, this was a model that really just resonated with me. And it's really not about problem-centered issues, it's more about solution-oriented. So, typical people think they go to therapy and they tell them all about their problems. This is what's wrong, and and that naturally happens anyway. But what a solution focused therapist is interested in is their hopes. What are your best hopes? How would you know if things were getting better? What would that look like? How would life be different if blah, 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 blah? What difference would it make for you when? And so you get into all these different types of questions that get people to imagine their life without the problem. And so it almost, in a sense, it's almost hypnotic. And they start to imagine a life that's different than the problem they came in with. And when they do that, they start making different decisions and choices, and they start doing things differently when they leave, which obviously makes a change in what they experience, right? So that's what SFT is really all about. It's probably the easiest way to describe it. So I fell in love with the model and been practicing that model even before 2013 when I opened Brighter Possibilities. I was doing it before then too. So what happened was we have so many kids that come in from court orders that are super resistant. And so resistance is not uncommon for us. That is very common territory. If a parent comes in and says, "Hey, my kid may come in here and just be quiet. They might even talk to you." Fine, not a big deal. I've done it before. And so they kind of wonder, how do I do this? So what happened was everyone seems to struggle with resistant clients, or at least that's what they call them. And I say, well, it might be a resistant therapist. It may not be a resistant client, right? You may just not be willing to do something different with them to help them get comfortable enough of connecting with you. And it may not be just in their words. So what I did one day is I realized that there was this really, when people get hurt in relationships, they have a hard time having empathy
Mhm.
because when they become empathetic, they become vulnerable, and become vulnerable, you become a target, and you don't want to be too vulnerable and get hurt. And so we develop cynicism, which means we don't trust people, and that happens in broken relationships and families. So long story short, I'll give an example of a case I had. I had a girl come in. She hadn't talked to her dad in like 2 or 3 years. And she was kind of mad that dad's having her go through all this. She's like, I know my dad went to court and my dad asked for counseling and now the court ordered it. And I'm just so pissed with my dad and blah, blah, blah. So I let her kind of get all that out. And I said, hey, I want to do an exercise with you. And she said, okay. And I said, I'm going to have you play your dad. Since I don't know your dad very well, I'm going to ask you a series of questions and I just want you to answer as your father.
Okay.
And she kind of thought that was different. She's like, okay. And I said, it's okay if you don't know, just whatever you think he might say. I mean, you're obviously it doesn't matter if you're wrong, you're free to guess. And I'm just gonna go through that with you. So tell me your dad's name again. And so she tells me your dad's name, and let's just call him Frank, in this case. And so I call her by the name. So I said, okay, Frank. I said, well, thank you for being here, Frank, and I have some questions for you. And so I start asking her questions as Frank, her dad. But things like, Frank, what is it about this relationship with your daughter that means so much to you that you would even be willing to go to the court to get it ordered? What is it about this? So now this kid's having to answer as their parent. So they're in a position where they start to empathize. Makes sense? Again, the thing they didn't want to do, they're doing it through an exercise. The reason we call it the 4R is it's a resist refusal, right? So that's two R's, and it's role reversal. There's the other two. So you're doing a role reversal due to resist refusal. Make sense? And then
Does.
we blend them to the four. So yeah, it's a complete shift in their role, and it's so amazing. Um, I will tell you that the longest I've done that exercise is about 10 minutes because after about 10 minutes they start to cry because they start connecting. And so in this particular case, I got about 7 minutes in. I was probably a little under 10. She began to tear up And so rather than continue the exercise, I said, if I can we stop for a second? And she said, yes. I said, what do those tears mean? And she said, I can sense my dad's pain. And she goes, as much as I want to make this about me, I realize now that my dad really does love me. He just had a different way of trying to show that to me. And this is really not an attempt to hurt me, but more of an attempt to try to connect with me. Got that done in 7 minutes.
Pretty
I would have
amazing.
never been able to do that in traditional therapy, So it came out of not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
And so I just said, I got to try something different. And so using their knowledge as an advantage of their own interaction with their parent became basically my golden apple, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I came up with. I developed it. There's other therapeutic approaches that use a role reversal
Mhm.
method, but not like this, not in this capacity, in this way. And so I'd love to say I coined it, but I'm sure someone's probably created something similar.
Did you
Uh,
trademark it?
I'm trademarking it right now, probably. Yeah,
I would.
I've written about it. I've written about it. It's going in my next book. I have two books, and
Oh, tell
so
us about those.
oh yeah. So my first book I just published. It's a small book. I call it the Mighty and Powerful. It's called One Question Away: 50 Therapeutic Questions to Change Everything. So it's really designed for people to read, ask themselves some personal questions. They can use it in their own dialogue. And then it has stories aligned with it to show how those questions are used. And so I wrote that just really for the general public. The next book that I'm still currently writing is for professionals. And so I have the 4R approach in training people how to use it. And I have this other approach that I developed. Well, I didn't develop it, I actually learned it from Aisha and Joe out in London. So I have really good connection with these people in London, England, who do similar work that I do. And they developed this thing called a silent session. And so I talked to them and got permission for them to use it. And they said, look, you use it in your own way. Absolutely, you should write about it. And so, of course, I give them credit for it, but silent sessions. So I'm developing a book on technique to help other clinicians learn how to connect with clients who they're struggling with, right? Families who have had, broken stuff for 7 years or more. I've had one family, they said they've been in counseling for 14 years.
Yeah.
And I was their, I don't know, fourth counselor. I said, good, I'm going to be your last one.
Love that.
Um, to me, I'm kind of I should probably put the buck stops here on my door like the president did one day. But because reality, like I always get people after they've already tried everything else. That's what it seems to be. I guess that's who we've become here, at least in our area. So I'm like,
But
that's
isn't it
fine.
great that you're like sharing it forward, saying, okay, if this is a book for the user, 50 questions
Yep,
to just sit and develop and understand the why. Why are we asking it? Like, why can be such a deep question when you just keep asking it, as
yep,
well as, okay, this works for us. We
correct.
want to be the last counselor that they come to. So we're going to share
Yes.
this so that you
Yeah,
too can spread that. That's the
right.
mission that you're talking about. I hear you have a podcast too, Michael. Tell us about that
We
one.
do. Yeah. So we have a podcast called Beyond Divorce, Embracing Change. We developed that a little over a year ago. We're heading into our second year. Um,
Congrats.
Thank you. We did find out that we are worldwide, so we are being listened to across the globe now. So we're excited and we're coast to coast. And so, of course, we're still trying to grow that for people. And the reason we developed it was we sit in the conference room every day, the counselors, our team, and we would discuss cases. We call it staffing a case. So we would like either talk about a struggle we were going through or an idea we had or something different to develop a way to help families and help systems. And so we work really, if you hire us to work with you, you're really getting four other counselors. So if I'm working with you, there's four other counselors here that are working with you behind the scenes you may never meet, but you don't realize that we're having conversations in the conference room. So as we're talking through all this stuff and all these dynamics, we're like, wouldn't it be cool if the public had access to our knowledge? Because there's people out there that need help that we'll never meet.
Mhm.
And they were like, how do we do that? And so podcast was born.
I love
And
it.
so that's what it's all about. And it is a podcast about divorce and all the dynamics that go into it, from step parenting, what we talked about, grandparents being involved, to finding a new partner, how to introduce a new partner to your kids, what do kids need in divorce, what are the roles kids play in divorce. I mean, it's all in there. I've had one guy, he begged me never to stop the podcast. So he was a client and he said to me, is walking out, actually walking out the door here in my office, and he said, Michael, do me a favor. I said, what's that? He goes, please don't stop doing the podcast. And I was like,
Because
is that why I'm seeing you less? Because he seems to be listening to the podcast more than coming in.
But I
Um,
mean, that's fantastic too. And I love the fact that, like, everything you talked about, so much of it, yes, it applies directly to your clients that are in divorce, but that how to introduce a new spouse, that goes straight to our widowhood community, right? How to do it on your own, right to our
yep.
widowhood community, right? And how do we do the negotiation within it? So, where can people find that podcast, my love?
Yeah, so you can actually go to our website, brighterpossibilitiesfc.com. You can click on there, and that'll take you to the links. We're on Apple, Spotify, I believe YouTube. You just type in Beyond Divorce, Embracing Change, and we'll pop up. You'll see probably my face in there and our team. And that's it. And you just find the episode you love and follow along with us. And I will say that there may be some episodes you come across and you're like, "Ooh, they said something there. Where's that?" It might be in a different episode, but we always link it. So that way you're not having to figure this out like a puzzle.
Yeah,
We're
you can
trying
go
to
to the episode that you feel would be most impactful to you that day, that
100%.
moment, that period of time. Because, yeah, a divorce one on how to separate and tell your kids, very different than how to bring in the new boyfriend named Bubba.
Right.
Very different, right? So these are things that you can select. So,
Correct.
Michael, thank you so much for being here on our podcast today. We really appreciate it. We're gonna make sure, listeners, that all of the show notes have the direct links to the podcast and to Michael's books and to his website, so you guys can lean in more. And even to our listeners out there that are the therapists that support our clients, I think Michael will be very open to some conversations about the 4R and how we do this, correct?
I want to help as many people as I can. I think our goal is to make the world a better place than the way we came into it,
Yeah.
so we can leave it for the next generations to make it better even there. Just continuing to progress. And I want to progress our field. I want to help families. I'll just say this before we go. When I saw working with these families over all the years I've done this, there's a level of this I believe is spiritual. Honestly, I believe that if I had a mission to change the world, I would try to destroy families. I would try to split them apart. I'd make them not trust each other. I'd make them because the turmoil that you see in families when they can't work together and they can't trust each other and the bonds are broken, those kids go through so much as adults, even in their own relationships. And so I just see this, it's like a pattern, right? And it snowballs. And so I'm trying to interrupt it. So I'm definitely pro marriage. Let me just say that up front. Like I'm not like, oh, I'm pro divorce. Divorce happens and they don't know where to fall in. And so I'm kind of there going, when you divorce, I want to help catch you. Make sense? But in truth, if I could really save a marriage, I would love to. I've had a case where I had that happen. They came in for co-parenting counseling, and in the second session, when it ended, they actually decided to work out their marriage. Don't think that that was not awesome when no more court hearings were happening and the attorneys were like, "Hey, Michael, what'd you do to our clients?" I help their family. That's what I do. I'm not here to help the attorneys achieve their agenda as much as I'm here to help families work together and grow, whatever that needs to look like. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there that I do. I really care about people and I want to see them break a pattern and start a new cycle, which is about helping families stay unified even in the midst of a divorce.
And thank you for sharing that, because I think it's
Sure.
rare to hear someone pop onto a podcast talking about their business and why their why. And at the end to be like, it's actually a spiritual thing, because I'm also, I might cry, a believer that, like, our soul is here to make the world a better place. And that
That's
if we
right.
can spread that love to more than just our family, to our clients, and then to their next generation, look at being that last stop for them in counseling. Look what that did, because then it just starts to be that now they're going to be better parents when they grow up to be adults. And now they're going to lean in and get support if they need it, because there's no instruction book for any of this, right? But yeah, big believer in that. So thank you for sharing that part too. I think
Oh,
that's going to resonate so much with our listeners. Thank you.
thank you. That's what we're here for. Thank you so much,
All
Donna.
right, everybody, say bye to Michael, and we're going to make sure all of his contact information is in the show notes. Thank you again, Michael, for being a part of
My
Widow Wisdom
pleasure.
and Wealth today.
Thank you, Donna.